All right, shall we? Wow, voice of God. Sorry. Shall we get started? I think we're mostly here. So, hello everybody. This tutorial is on creating, building, testing, and documenting a Python project, a hands-on how-to. My name's Titus. Luiz, who's the other listed instructor, is wandering around currently. Camille, who didn't manage to make it into the database, is also going to be co-instructing, and then we have an additional helper in the back that I'll introduce in a minute. So you should all have received 2 emails from me now, one on sort of things, installation requirements, a couple days ago, like yesterday, and then just now I sent one saying, here's our sort of agenda and README and so on and so forth. So if you don't have those, don't worry about it. We'll be giving you the URLs here again. It's not a big deal, but those materials will stay up. And I believe will the tutorial videos be posted publicly?
I believe so, yes.
So don't bother paying attention to me. It's all going to be there for all eternity. All right, so I have been told that we must start with some announcements. So welcome to PyCon 2016. There's going to be a survey link for this tutorial. It's in the README. It's located on the back page. I don't know what that means. And it's also available in the Guidebook mobile app. So please do fill out the survey. It helps PyCon decide whether or not they should ignore any further tutorial requests, offers from us in the future. We'll have a break at 3 o'clock. When I talk about the agenda, we'll do that again, but we'll have a 20-minute break at 3 o'clock. So that's when the sort of bio break will be, as well as coffee and snacks. And then I find the phrasing slightly curious. We have placed as much power as we could afford. Please share the outlets. Outlets could be in your row or the row behind you or the row in front of you. So I don't know exactly what that means. Plug in, argue over plugins, plugging in your laptop with the people in your immediate vicinity, because if you don't have one, they do. I think that's what that means. All right, so who we are. So I'm Titus, Luiz, Camille. We're all at UC Davis, where we do academic things. But as part of our academic things, we do a lot of Python things as well. And we have a variety of different projects. And as part of running those projects, we basically no longer maintain any hosting or build or test or documentation infrastructure ourselves. We run it all off of free resources on the internet that we'll introduce you to today. And some of those are things for continuous integration, documentation, packaging, and version control, right? So I'm sure you've all had some experience with some of those, and we're just basically going to walk you through the various issues and combining and connecting the various services that we use, so you can sort of see them in operation and decide whether or not you want to use them yourself. So let's see. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of my background. I've been programming in Python for like something like 18 years. I've been to a bunch of PyCons. I've run a bunch of tutorials. And I code in Python more or less daily. I don't know. Is there anything else I should say? Yeah. I have the mic, so I get to say whatever I want. So yeah. So Luis, you want to say something? Go ahead and just say something about yourself.
I've been using Python since undergrad. I have no actual industry experience, so you shouldn't listen to me. And I use Python for a couple of projects I maintain, some software applications and libraries, and I do data analysis stuff. And yeah.
Cool. All right, we also have a 4th member of our lab in the back there, Jessica Mitzi. She'll be helping out with questions and installation problems. So, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but basically, like, we should have, if you have any problems whatsoever, just flag someone down. We have enough people to help cover it all, and our goal is to get everybody sort of moving forward on the same page.
And if you don't want to raise your hand, you can use these stickers in front of you.
Right, I'll get there. I'll get there. It's in the agenda, like 3 points down. All right, so, should I check the boxes? Okay, oh, you're checking the boxes. Okay, good. So, okay, so a few quick questions just to sort of figure out where the room is at. How many of you use GitHub regularly? GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab? Okay, so about half, okay. How many of you have never, well, this is always a tough one. How many of you have used some version control system and hosting website? That includes GitHub, so more than half the room should now be. Okay, okay. So for those of you that don't have any experience in this, we may sort of glide swiftly over some commands. Please feel free to slow me down, and you can do that, or slow us down, and you can do that by just sort of being like, or whatever. Don't feel the need to like raise your hand to slow us down. How many of you use continuous integration in any form? If you don't know what that is, don't raise your hand. Okay, excellent, awesome. This is perfect. How many of you do any sort of testing of your code, automated testing of your code? Oh, okay, cool. So this is even more perfect because most of you do testing, but most of you don't do continuous integration. So basically, like 5 minutes after the end of today's workshop, 80% of you that have tests but no continuous integration should have continuous integration. And that's if you don't install continuous integration on your project over the break. What? No, I'm not going to ask them if they know what continuous integration is. We're going to explain it. We'll explain it. Also, how many of you use any documentation hosting services? So anything Jekyll, read the docs, anything like that? Oh, awesome. Okay. Okay. This is tricky. How many of you have documentation for any of the projects you work on? Okay. Good. 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 Right. More of you have tests than documentation. I actually sort of view that as a victory. Because anyway, and then how many of you have packages that you've posted to PyPI, the Python package index? Nobody? Okay. Cool. Well, we'll show you how to do that. It's super easy. Right. So, okay. So, code of conduct and some expectations. There is a PyCon code of conduct, I believe. Basically, it's like don't be a jerk. So we expect you not to be jerks. If you happen to know everything that we're talking about and feel the need to display that, there are 2 ways to display that you know everything we're talking about. One is outside in the convenient open area out there. Please feel free to go explain your expertise out there to whoever goes by. The other thing you can do is you can actually join in and help the people next to you who will no doubt be having some problems getting the commands right and where the period and the semicolon is on the thing. So those are your 2 options. You can either help or leave. We would ask that you not spend too much time arguing with us. We're always happy to take input, but everybody has opinions, and ours are the ones that count. So, in a good way, in a gentle, nice, friendly, welcoming way. But I have the microphone. So the other thing is, right, so with the expectations, right, you feel free to help out. Okay, sticky notes. So we have placed 2 color sticky notes in front of you, 1 red, 1 green. We're going to go with green being good and pink or red being bad. And what that just means is by bad, we mean, hey, I'm not level with where we are up here. I need some help. And if you put it, I don't have one. All right. If you need help of any kind, if you have a question or you run into a configuration problem or something, just put a sticky note on the back of your laptop where Jessica in the back can see it or we up here can see it, and someone will come over and help you out with things. Periodically, to sort of make sure that everybody's in the room is sort of keeping pace, we'll ask you to put your green sticky notes up if everything is sort of copacetic. That is, you've gotten to the point where everything's sort of really okay, where you're caught up with everything we're doing. If you're in the middle of something, don't worry about putting up a red or a green sticky. We'll wait for you until most of the room is green stickies. So that's how we sort of keep track of whether or not half the room's lost or run into a configuration problem or not. Okay, so the goals for today, so we have you for about 3 hours, minus like 20 minutes. The goals for today are hands-on experience and demonstration with these tools. So assuming the internet cooperates, we're going to run you through actually putting continuous integration and documentation hosting and packaging and stuff in place on an existing project. It's going to be a project that we've developed for you because we want everything to sort of work easily and it doesn't have a lot of dependencies. And it's a pure Python project, but get some hands-on experience with that. We also want to help you get these things installed on your own laptop where necessary. So sort of give you some in-person debugging time. And then the real purpose is actually time and space for questions. So these questions don't need to be confined to technical issues like, hey, like, what package should I use for this? But can be things like, why would you ever want to do this? What are the upsides? What are the downsides of using this kind of approach? You know, where have you found this approach particularly useful in your own work? Please feel free to ask those questions if you're at any point you're wondering why on earth anybody would do this. And this is actually where other perspectives, so if you use other sites than GitHub, if you use other sites than Read the Docs, or if you use other testing frameworks, can come in if you're like, hey, I use this framework, you know, what do you think? What do you think about that versus what's the difference between that and what you're proposing here? And a lot of the time the answer will be, we had to pick something for the tutorial, but that's a perfectly good thing to use. Just so, and sometimes we'll have some more information about what may or may not work with that other piece of software. All right. So are there any questions at this point? Any? No? All right, great. Okay, I've intimidated you all. Excellent. So, right. So we have a README on the website, and this is the website that all of you should have received in email. If you didn't, you can go to github.com/dib-lab/2016-PyCon-tutorial. DibLab is the name of our lab at UC Davis. It's the lab for data-intensive biology. And the front page will have a list of files in it, and one of those files will be this README. And this README basically says what it says. And you can get some links and information off of the README. So a couple things here. One is we do actually have a chat room on Gitter. Not clear we're going to need to use that. We have a Twitter hashtag if now or later you want to ask questions and have them all sort of tagged to the workshop and see what answers there were for others. We also have something that could come in quite handy, especially if it's very unlikely because we're serious professionals at this, but there may occasionally, rarely be something mildly wrong, syntactically speaking, with one of our tutorials. It's probably going to be Luis's fault, and we might have to correct it. And in that case, we have this Etherpad site, and the Etherpad site is actually a site where we can put, you can all, without any login, you can go down and type stuff. And this is now a place where you can, where we can put code for you to copy and paste in case, or code or commands for you to copy and paste, so that you don't have to read spaces and semicolons off of the screen. Okay. If you haven't had any experience with Etherpad, this site will host them for free. There are a lot of actual sites to host Etherpads for free. There's also a chat on the side. You can ask questions there. If nobody's answering your question, put up a red sticky and tell us to start monitoring the Etherpad site. Okay, this is the feedback form that we'll ask you to fill out at the end. And then this is the link to the tutorial website. Then down below, resources for installation and setup, which you should already have received yesterday morning, and then the tutorial agenda. And so what I'm going to do is just sort of quickly go through the tutorial agenda. So right now we're in the introduction and overview section of the agenda, and I'll finish that out in a couple minutes. Excuse me. Then we're going to start with continuous integration, and we'll explain what continuous integration is and show you how it works, and then put it in place on this project that you will have made a copy of. And then after, we'll have a break at 3, and then at 3:20 we'll go through documentation and hosting documentation on Sphinx, on Read the Docs. At 3:45 we'll talk about packaging and posting your project to PyPI. If we don't get through all of this, that's okay. I think the important bits will be through here, and then posting your project to the Python package index is sort of extras. And then at the very end, we have some additional resources, and the additional resources are, things like best practices for packaging, templates for scientific packages, and other projects that you can link. And anything that comes up during the tutorial, we'll post here. All right. Any questions yet? We're all good? Okay. Okay. So our application today. So we decided to put in place like a little bit of code for everybody to work with so that everybody's on the same page. And so we put together this super exciting software. It's called, it's under PyCon tutorial project. Don't worry too much about getting it yourself, but basically it is a project that is setting out to make word count great again. And what we have done is basically produced a script that uses a library function to count the number of characters, words, and lines in some text files, right? This is not intended to be an interesting project, but it does have a few useful bits that will help us show you how to import code and so on and so forth. So just to sort of show off, okay, so just to show off a few things. So if you grab this project, and I here am going to grab it to my laptop. Tutorial, well, actually. Can people sort of see that font? Is that font more or less okay? You won't need to ever copy anything directly off of this, but I want people to sort of see roughly what it is we're typing. Okay. So I'm going to clone project tutorial. Okay. So if I check out a copy and I go into it, there's this file word count, and if I run word count, let's say license, well, that's not good. Oh, sorry, I'm running Python 2. Let's try that again. All right, excellent. Okay, so if I run word count on the license file, I see that it's got 4.5 thousand characters, 618 words, 115 lines, and that's in one file. And if you look at what word count does, actually, I'll show you on the syntax highlighted GitHub page. If you look at what the word count script does, it is sort of close to your simplest possible Python script. It has a main function. It uses argparse to take one or more file names. So nargs equals plus means one or more file names. It then keeps track of the total words, total lines, total characters. It iterates over the file names, runs the word count lib.consume function on each file name, and then tracks the total words, lines, and characters, and then gives you the result. Okay. So, and then there's to run it as a script. Info. All right, so pretty close to your simplest possible Python script. The only thing we threw in was we sort of threw in this unnecessary word count lib. I mean, it's not unnecessary. It's always good to have reusable code, but word count lib here is, again, a fairly simple function. Consume chars, words, lines. It opens the file. For every line in the file, it increments lines, words, and chars appropriately, and then returns those. And then Camille has helpfully extended the project by creating a function called dangerous with 4 A's that we'll show you the use for this later, but basically it's to show you code coverage analysis as a way of figuring out which bits of your project aren't covered by any of your existing tests. Okay. And you'll notice that there's a divide by 0 in there if you call it. Yeah. We're scientists, so this is about the quality of the code we typically write. So it all works out fine. Nobody ever runs our code, so it's perfect. Okay, so there are a couple other things about this project that are useful. So first, I'll just note, there is a license, should any of you care to extend this project. It's under BSD 3 clause, so you can include it in your commercial source code without any fear of contamination. It's a full open source project. We're very serious about our open source. And then, what? It is. Does it say KHMR in it? Okay, well, we need to, could you just fix that? Yeah. I just copied it from another project, and apparently I didn't edit it properly. Anyway, so we also have this test file, and the test file is test word count. And I should say, so I'm a big proponent of testing. in our lab, we do a lot of software testing of our own code because we don't trust ourselves, and I certainly don't trust my graduate students, and they definitely don't trust professor-written code. So there's a lot of nodding going on over there, right? Yeah. So full disclosure, I wrote this word count thing in one sitting, and I actually wrote a bunch of bugs into it that the tests helped me debug. So even like a 10-line app that does like nothing useful or interesting will have bugs in it. And so we believe very, very strongly in using tests to deal with that. And here we have some tests, and we can go over the tests later, but in more detail if people are interested. But basically, we've written 3 or 4 test functions that make a test file that contains some specific text. Here, the test file contains A space B space CC new line DDD. And then we say, well, there's 10 characters in there are 4 words in there, and there are 2 lines in there, right? And so when we run our word count lib.consume on this input, we should see 10, 4, and 2, right? So let's just make sure that works. And the fun bit about this with the tests is I wasn't actually sure what the code I wrote would do in some circumstances, so I wrote this test consume 3 that made sure that words were properly broken by white space both at the beginning and end of the line, right? So I sort of have an experimental approach to figuring out how some of my code works. So in order to run these tests, we use py.test. And do I need to run it on something in particular? No, it'll figure everything out. So, and py.test will find the function will find the file test underscore wordcount.py, and we'll run all 3 tests, and it'll say 3 tests pass in 0.03 seconds. How do I get verbose output? Is it just -v? So if I run -v, py.test -v, it'll tell me that the names of the tests that passed. Okay. So everybody's good so far with roughly what's going on? I'm happy to walk through the code in more detail either now or later, but this is, okay, some code, some tests. Super boring, right? Maybe some details in there, but basically like the most boring application with the most boring tests ever. Good, that's where we want to be. Okay. The last thing I did, and I hope you recognize how over the top this is we wrote some documentation. So we have both API documentation for the library function, word count lib. Word count lib module can be imported, has one function, yada, yada, yada. And the main thing about this documentation, which we also have for the command line interface, is that I don't know if you noticed, but it's rendered here. So it's not pure text. It's actually restructured text that's been rendered with sort of verbatim tags and so on and so forth. And the way we made that happen is it's in a markup language called restructured text. And if you put restructured text files on GitHub and name them .rst, GitHub will helpfully render them for you. So the simplest possible way to write documentation for your package is simply to write some documentation in either Markdown or restructured text and put them on GitHub. And what we're going to show you is how to tie that documentation together into a single, more nicely rendered site that is easier to browse when you have large sets of documentation. And that's what we use read the docs and Sphinx for. All right. So I did the command line demo, I showed off the application, I showed the documentation, and I ran the tests. All right, so I think before we move on to continuous integration, which I think Luiz is going to start with, or Camille, I don't know, anyway. I thought we'd all start with everybody getting their own copy of this project. So all of you should go to this URL. This is github.com/new/import. The URL's in the Etherpad, and it's also in the sort of agenda link or the introduction link on the agenda page. So go to that URL, and you should be presented, assuming you're all logged into GitHub. If you're not logged into GitHub, log into GitHub. You should be presented with an import your project to GitHub. Okay, we're going to do a little dry run here. Everybody that is at this page, please put a green sticky on the back of your computer. Okay, everybody that isn't on this page and doesn't want to go to this page, please also feel free to put a green sticky up. If you want to go to this page but are having trouble with GitHub, please put a pink sticky up. Okay. Sorry, I know I went too fast on the URL front. Yeah. This is why it's a dry run, right? Like. Okay, so the reason many of you have probably seen forking projects on GitHub. The reason we're actually doing import instead of a fork is that, and this is sort of a technical detail that you don't need to pay attention to, but is that a fork links your new project to the original project on GitHub. And that's something that's sort of, and I don't think you can easily, it's harder to change the name of a fork. Whereas if you import, you can say, look, I want all this source code and I want it here and I want it under a new name and disconnected from anything else. So which is what we want for today. And the real trick here is that the other thing to keep in mind here is that you don't just have to import from GitHub, you can import from Bitbucket or Subversion or other repositories by putting that URL in here. It does have to be a public, yeah. Although, yeah, I don't know how to. I wonder if you could. I bet you could give it a username and password in the URL, and it would work. But I don't know. Okay, so I'm actually going to do this in an incognito browser, where I am logged in under anything. Okay, so everybody. Looks like everybody that wants to be there is there. Oh. So, okay, so this is not intending to shame you. I would just point out that with your sticky like so, I'm the only person that can see it. If you put your sticky like so, then Jessica in the back can see it. Proper sticky placement. Just saying. Oh, all good? Okay. PyCon Wi-Fi issues? Shoot. Okay, well, I'm going to proceed. So what we want to do is find the project. And to find the project, I'm going to go to the Etherpad and copy the URL for the project. I'm going to put it in the import. And so the project that we're going to import is diblab 2016 PyCon tutorial project. And your new repository details should be something semi-random. It shouldn't be 2016 PyCon tutorial because we're going to be creating documentation sites that have a globally unique URL. And so you want yours to be like something like PyCon tutorial Titus is going to be mine. Don't use that. Use something that's unique to you. It used to be that GitHub had nice playful default URL or new project names, and I think they took them down because serious people are using GitHub now. Okay, if you're stuck at any point, I'm going to click on Begin Import. Actually, I'm going to wait, but everybody else should feel free to click on Begin Import. If you click on Begin Import, please take down your green stickies, and we'll revisit the stickies in a moment. Okay. If anybody needs help with the URLs, just flag us down with a hand or a red sticky. Sorry, yeah, what's up? It can be, it doesn't, no, this is just something that's unique. This could be, yeah, any unique name, yeah. Okay, looks like everybody's, so remember, if you click on that begin import, take down your green sticky. That means everybody that has a green sticky right in front of their face should, no? Okay. Okay, I'm going to click on Begin Import. And what this is going to do is it's going to take all of the stuff from this repository, from the original repository, and import it here. And now is when my Wi-Fi will no doubt go out. And you can see it says stuff. And then at some point it says, your new repository is ready. So click on that. And you should see something like this, which is repository, and the last commit will be something that Camille committed, update license, and this will be under your own GitHub username. So you've successfully gotten a copy of the project, the tutorial project for today. Okay, those of you, the last step before I turn this over to people more competent than me is going to be to clone a copy of this to your computer. So those of you that know how to do that, go ahead and do that. Those of you that don't use Git regularly, this is where we're probably going to need to help you a little bit to figure out what to do. If you're using a Unix machine, you should be able to go over to the clone or download. You don't want to download a zip. You want to use Git or checkout. You want to use Git with either HTTPS or SSH using this URL. And I will copy and paste the command that I'm going to use in a second. But basically, you take that URL and you do git clone, and then at the command line, you do git clone and then that. And it will say something like cloning into PyCon tutorial, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And you'll end up with a directory that looks like this if you're on a Mac, and looks something like that if you're on a Windows machine. Okay? And this is crucial to get this done. So please, if you get to this, please put up a green sticky. If you run into any problems, please put up a pink sticky. And if you're still in the middle of it, please just don't put up any sticky at all. Okay? I put the clone command that I used at the bottom of the Etherpad. You probably don't want to run exactly this clone command, because then you'll be getting my copy of the project. But you'll want to put your own HTTP URL in. And just to remind everybody where I got that from this clone or download. It says clone with HTTPS when I click on the little green box in my new repo. OK. So those of you that don't have internet access at the moment, just chill for a little bit, watch. It should be OK. And then we'll try again in like 10 minutes and see if maybe magically Wi-Fi and your computer have decided to get along. OK. So, and please feel free to play around with the code and the files and stuff if you want. Luiz? Or, sorry, was it Luiz or Camille that was going to do next?
Okay, hello, mic working? Cool. So next step, since we have some tests running already in our code, we're going to introduce the idea of continuous integration. And what's happening here is that continuous integration is you can set up a service or you can set it up yourself, or you can use some free ones like we are doing here. But the idea is for every commit you have in your code, continuous integration will run all the tests for you and verify that what you're adding to your code is still passing the tests. Or if there is, make sure there's no syntax error or anything like that. And for this example, we're going to use one free CI provider, which is drone.io. And there are many others. There is Travis and Jenkins, but drone.io is very easy to set up, so we're going with this one for now. And to do this, we are going to create a new account on drone.io, but the benefit is that you can log in with your GitHub account, so you don't need a new username and a new password. So you're just going to drone.io. I will log out because I was logged in. And once you're here in drone.io, you go here on the right on login, and you can select GitHub on this page. And so here we are going to go with everyone still have the green stickers up. But once you get to this page, you're logged in with your GitHub account, please put the green sticker up. And then or if you have any trouble logging in here, you can put the pink sticker also, and then we'll go help you. Well, while we are solving some issues around, one big benefit of using continuous integration, if you're developing your own project, it might not seem that necessary because you can always run the tests yourself or so on. But a benefit of using is that GitHub has integration for setting the status of everything you do with this continuous integration. So you can always check every time you do something new on GitHub, you can see if something happened with your code and so on. And this is essential when you're collaborating with more people, because then you don't need to keep track, and every time someone makes a change, you go back, download the code, and run the code yourself. So you'll always have this feedback available. Okay, so once we're on drone.io, I forgot to actually clone the repository for me, so just a second. It's the other way around.
The Wi-Fi is a known issue. The hamsters are in the wheel.
I was responsible for insect.
Yes. Which leaves who to fix it? That's the problem. The job ad's already posted. It won't be more than a couple weeks.
Upwards.
Okay, you want the full URL? Okay. Okay, cool. Now I also have the repository in my account. So the drone.io interface is very Spartan. There's not many options, but there is a button here for new project. And once you go on new project, did anyone say? Okay. You can select, they have support for GitHub, Bitbucket, and Google Code. Google code doesn't even exist anymore. Okay, they need to update this. But Bitbucket is another place where you can put your repositories. We are going with GitHub because that's what we have set up today. And okay, there's a lot of repositories here. Where is the one I want?
Your GitHub account is a member of a lot of organizations.
Yes. PyCon tutorial. Okay, it's not showing up here yet. Okay, if your repository is not showing up automatically here, you might want to do what I'm doing here. If you go to the end of the page, you can add your repository, so it will be your username / and this is the repository name I created. No, it was PyCon tutorial Luiz. And then you click on Add Repository. And then it will ask you which language you want to use. But before we go further down the line, everyone that's seen this page, please put the green sticker. Everyone that has problems, please put the pink sticker. Just can you help me? Okay, since almost everyone is in this page, well, obviously we're going to select Python here, but if you have projects in any other languages, you could add your thing through. And then from here, we are going to fill up. On Drone.io, you need to tell how you're going to build your project and run your tests. In our case, if you go to the repository here, we have a small description on what you need to put there. And basically what we are doing, yes? Sure. Where is the Etherpad? And basically what we are doing here is we are installing PyTest, which is our test runner, and coverage, which is a library to see how much of our code is covered by the tests we are running, and Sphinx for the documentation. And then the second line is just how we are going to run the tests. So if we go here and replace that with the new code. It's on the Etherpad. Should be, I'm connected, so it's the last 2 lines on the Etherpad. Yeah, it's also on the GitHub issue. Yeah, the GitHub issue has some nice pictures showing also. If you
Yeah, so if you go to the agenda page, if you go to the agenda page, there's links to each of these little GitHub issues. So we're on the continuous integration issue.
Yeah, we have on the initial page of the repository, there is this agenda. which has the description of all the steps we are going. And if you click here on continuous integration, you can follow along. Okay. And now I put the new code here, telling how we are going to run this test. And if we save, it will ask some other questions. And the thing we need to change here is that since our project is Python 3, we need to use Python 3.3. We recommended on the installation, your local installation, that you have Python 3.5. But since we don't maintain Drone.io and it's a free service, we can't really go there and ask them to install in Python 3. We need some pressure for that. But should work with Python 3, so we can run the test with Python 3. We'll be fine for now. And that's always the issue of using free stuff, is that you don't have control on what features you want to have there. But anyway, it's free. Yeah, of course, it's free.
You can manually set up an environment, a built environment every time.
Yeah. And that's the only thing we need to change here, and we can save the changes. And once you do this, every time we add new things to our GitHub repository, this Drone.io will go to GitHub, check every new thing we have, and run the tests for the new code that's on GitHub. Another way, if you don't want to put any new content there, you can also click on this Build Now button, just to check if everything is working. And this is nice for debugging if you have any errors on the commands you're running. And then it will show you this page with a log of everything that's running. And luckily, this doesn't depend on our network. It depends on their network. We hope their network is working. Okay. And while we are, well, let me ask, how is everyone going? Everyone is in this page? Or something similar? If you have any issues, please put the pink sticker up. My build is very slow. Yeah, well. There's also this problem when you depend on free services. It might take some time. And usually the idea is also like you don't want this kind of super fast feedback on the build system. Like you want the feedback eventually. If you're running something more time constrained, you want to see that. But then you can pay for a CI or set up your own continuous integration server. But it's not our goal today. And now I'll go just to show, like, we are running that build that we started, but just to show how it picks up things from your GitHub. I'm going to edit the project. Let me go somewhere. Okay. And I'm gonna clone the repository since I didn't do this yet. You can try to do this too in your repository. It was PyCon. Okay, so here I have the word count project. And since I'm very responsible, I don't want to add code without adding a test first. But I am also not going to add more code right now, more functionality to our beautiful word count project. So I'm going to just add another test too. And will not even be a new test. Let's just, okay. I'll just copy and paste one test here, which may not be recommended, copying and pasting stuff like that, but we are not doing a best practice on testing right now. So I'll just change here, and instead of having ABC, I'm gonna put another characters here. So now this time we should have 5 words. And I don't want this white space. And we still have just one line. And I add, does our word count white spaces?
Good question.
Okay, so I don't want to write a wrong test. So 1, 2, 3. It count. Yes, it counts.
It shouldn't count for white space. It should split on white space.
But for the characters, it should count the white space.
Yes, for the characters it does.
Okay. So now we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this should be 12. Okay.
The way I figure out is I make the changes and then I run the tests. I see what the numbers are and I paste the numbers back.
I see. Well, we should probably next year do a tutorial on how to properly write tests, but for now, let's go with this. And I'm gonna work on. I should have everything here, so I'm gonna just run PyTest. Ah, it's right. Okay, so I got the right number. If I had the wrong number, and that's what Titus was saying, it was his methodology, so let's put the wrong number here, and I run the test, we'll have something saying that the result we got is not the result we wanted.
So if anybody wants to do this but doesn't want to deal with like the editing it on their local computer, I'd be happy to come by and show you how to edit the file directly on GitHub. They have a built-in editor for those of you that want to try that. So just flag me down if you're interested in that.
Yeah, I could actually have done that here straight, but anyway, let's.
Is anybody's build actually completed on drone?
Yeah, my build completed. So, okay, so let's show what's. There's a pink sticker there. So, since this build completed here, I'm just going to go through and show what the build looks like. And you can see there's a lot of commands here. So these are all the commands that drone run for our build. And there is some initial stuff that drone does by itself. So it's useful that it prints the version of your Python and your pip and so on. And this is the first command that we told drone to run. So you can see that it's installing some packages and installing some packages and installing more packages and a lot of logs. Okay, so, and this is the command that's actually running our tests. So we can see the output, and it's not colored like it's in my terminal, and it's probably in your terminal too. But you can see that the output here is very similar. Let me send this to. It's very similar to the output you have in your terminal. And also we can see here that mine didn't show the coverage because there's an error. I didn't ask for the coverage. Okay. On Drone.io, it's also showing the coverage of our code. And we can see that test word count, all the lines are covered by the test, which is kind of expected because we are running the code directly. And our library doesn't have, there are 2 lines in our library that doesn't have code coverage, and we are gonna fix this soon. But for now, since the build is here, I'm gonna go back to the terminal and fix the test that's wrong. So this should be 12. Yeah, well, if I read the comment here, I would have seen that the white spaces are included in the character count, so sorry for that. Okay, so now we can do, if I do git diff, it will show. Okay, git diff is showing some other stuff here that has minus and plus, and we can't see anything. So what's happening here is that the initial code had some white space, and my code editor is configured to strip white space because you shouldn't be putting white space in your code like this. But okay, and I also added 2 white space lines in the end. So okay. Let's remove the white space lines. Okay. There's. Yeah, well. So next year the tutorial will be on how properly test your code. Maybe on the next, in 2 years we can write how to do code styling in your code. But for now, since we are going just for testing and documenting and everything, we're not going to talk about this. So I'm going to add these changes and commit them and say, okay, new test. And finally, I'm going to send these changes to GitHub. But before I do that, I'll go to the history page here so we can see. So for now, there's only 1 build in drone.io. And I'm going to push the code in my computer over to GitHub. So once I do this, now the code is on GitHub. And GitHub has support, like every time there's a code change on GitHub, it can communicate to other services that something happened. And if we go now to the builds page and we reload the page, we can see that the build number 2 is started automatically. I didn't press the build now button this time. And if you click on the build, you can go see it's running the tests and, well, it's installing everything. So, yes?
There's a question of the Etherpad that I...
Okay. Where's the Etherpad? How secure is drone.io? Well, you're not adding any permissions to GitHub, so drone.io can change your stuff back. So it's really only for unless
it's private, right?
Yes. Well, everything we are doing here is for public projects. So drone.io doesn't need any permission on your GitHub account. But as soon as you try to use private repositories, then it changes because then drone.io needs to have access to your GitHub account to see which repositories you have. And there's always this tension on using free services because you should check which kind of permissions you're giving to the service. And there are some free services that require a lot of permissions and others that require less. But GitHub nowadays has support to break down the permissions, like you can give just read permission to some services. You don't need to give write permission. And yeah, well, if you start doing some fancy stuff with continuous integration, like for example, you can also start setting up, like once the build is completed, it posts all the code to a website or changes your project infrastructure or something like that. Then you might want to start using your own continuous integration or hire a service that will be more secure. But like for our test case, for free stuff that there's no security implications of the code because it's already public and everything, there's no problem. I don't know if that's what the question was about, whoever asked the question. Okay.
Can your repo still be private and link to Drone.io?
Yes. What might happen is that I think Drone.io has a limitation for just one private repository. And then after that, you need to start paying to have more private repositories. And this is usually the business model of all these free services, is that they are free for public source, for public repositories. But once you start using private repositories, then you need to pay for it. So now we have build number 2, and it succeeded again. If we go to the end, it says that we run 4 tests, and the coverage stayed the same. And of course, it stayed the same because I didn't try to actually cover what we don't have covered already. So it was kind of a useless test case that I added there. But again, next year on the testing tutorial, we can discuss that. But one thing, like if I'm running this on Drone.io, I can check the coverage here. If I'm running on my computer, where is the py.test? I can pass the --cov, and I don't have installed here. Okay. Okay, on this one I have pytest_cov. So we can see the test coverage on the terminal, or if you go to the end of the log on Drone.io, we can see the coverage. But there are, again, some services that you can use to show this coverage on a nice website for you to check. So, Camille, do you want to go through CodeCov, or should I? Okay. So, okay, everyone saw the build, saw the logs and everything. So now I'm going to pass for Camille to show how the website works.
Or what we're going to go over now, what Camille's going to go over now, I add a bunch of new code and I fail to write tests for all of it, and then Drone will be like, hey, just FYI, this isn't working anymore. And that can be really annoying, but in the long run, it can be very positive. Sorry, this is a question?
I don't have to press the button for the build job.
Right, you don't have to press the button for the build job. Drone watches GitHub, and when you make a change on GitHub, it automatically
And sends me an email or
and it will send. You can configure that. You can tell it to shut up, but it'll send you an email saying the build didn't work.
What tools do you recommend to use if I have a GitHub account for personal use and longer, or what tools do you use to do the changes, credentials, and
So you can have a separate drone.io account for personal and a separate one for work, and I would just do that. You have separate GitHub accounts? Yeah, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Good, it is working. Okay, so the next section we're going to do here is codecov.io. So as Luis was talking about, codecov is going to be a service that gives you an idea of how much of your code base is actually covered by your testing. And so this is another nifty free service similar to Drone, and those two can talk to each other. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually go to codecov.io, which we have a link here. What?
Increase this font size.
Yes. Everybody sees? Okay. So if you go to that page, you will probably have to press the login with GitHub button. So I don't, yeah. Whoop. Where's the actual button to log out on here? Ah. Okay, so you'll see something like this. And depending on your service, you can choose which one. We're using GitHub, so we're going to say sign in with GitHub. And for me, I'm already set up with GitHub. I think if you're logged in with GitHub already, you should go straight to this page. And then I'm an individual user, so I'm going to click on my name. Okay. So you should have something like this. So it doesn't always show all of your repositories right off the bat. So you can try to search for the name of your repository here, but sometimes it doesn't behave. So if you don't have your repositories listed, you can go up to the URL and do it manually. So I have a little note about that over here. So just add another slash, and then for me, it's PyCon-tutorial-project. So whatever the GitHub name is, and it'll bring you to that page. Of course, mine is already set up. I should probably do this with something that's not set up already. Just a second. I'm just going to really quick set up something new. Where is that? Which was the intro page? So you guys can get an idea what this looks like. Okay, then if I gotta, sorry, I'm basically just going back through the entire tutorial so that you guys have a fresh thing to, to go off of. Okay. Yes, I have a project named Dammit. Set up my drone, Python. And this way, if you got behind, you can get to see the whole thing again. Let's see, where was that page? Put this in there. Save it. Select the right language. Save. Build. Okay. So now we're all up synced together. So as I was saying, you put your repository name up here. Yet another toot. Okay. So you should be confronted with a page like this. What you have is a bunch of empty stuff because it hasn't actually looked at any of your code yet, and this nice big thing here asking about a repository token. So what this is the authentication for drone, which is running your tests, to talk to CodeCov. So we are down here. So what you're going to need to do is if you need to go back to your drone page. We're going to add this extra line to our build script. So if I'm in drone, on my repository, and I hit settings, we get back to this page. We're going to add another command to this. So for now, the your token thing is just a placeholder, and that's what we're going to grab from CodeCov. I'm going to close that tab. And my email. Okay. So you can just press copy. Paste it in there. Hit save. And you have to do another build, right? And then you can hit build now. So build 1 probably isn't actually done yet. Nope, it's a success. Okay. So this might take a little bit. So we have to wait for our second build to go. So everybody, if you've put in the CodeCov command in your admin page on drone.io, put up your green sticky.
If you're still working on it, you don't need to put the sticker, but if you're having trouble, please put the green sticker so we can.
Yeah, so your token will be different than mine. So that token has to come from your CodeCov dashboard.
Do you have to change the CI provider here to Bitbucket?
No. So these are just, let's see, I think these are, yeah, so these are if you wanted to, so this is something different, if you wanted to add an extra badge, I believe, yeah. So they don't actually have drone as an option, or no, they do. Ah. So we don't have to do that.
Yeah, so that command was there because CodeCov was changing a bit because they used to have one library for each language, and now they are using a bash script, but we are using the package they had available instead of running this. That's why we have the CodeCov is here on the pip install line, so we are installing from somewhere else.
Yes. So no, that line is not necessary. Yes.
So what is CodeCov? Is that a command it's running that it knows to go run code coverage on codecov.io?
Yeah, so what it's doing here is this is the command. It's running on the command line. And
I
then,
have that command on my local machine.
yes.
So you will have, if you do the pip install CodeCov,
Yeah.
then you will have the command.
Oh, so it's conceivable that I can just run it from my local
Yeah.
environment. Okay.
Yeah, and CodeCov is not doing anything, like it's not trying to assess the coverage or anything.
Yeah.
What's building the coverage is the PyTest command.
Yeah.
So CodeCov is just getting, okay, you
Yeah,
run
but
PyTest, I have the results, I'm just copying this to the website.
And so to kind of build on that, basically all these commands are just going to get run every time a build is triggered. So you can add all sorts of things into this. We're not going to really go into details there, but you can have it talk to other services. And if you want to add those integrations, this is the place to do it. Okay, so it looks like we have lots of greens. Okay, so now if we refresh, we have this nice new page. So we have our most recent commits. This will probably be whatever triggered the build if you've actually pushed from GitHub. And then down here we have a nice little, tells us for each file. what the coverage was. So test word count, 100%. If we go over here to word count lib and press on that, we can see that the dangerous function was not actually covered. Okay, so too fast. Okay, so what it gives you is a list of files for each, so you have an entry for each file that was actually tested by your testing code. So for example, the word count script wasn't actually included in this because py.test decided not to try to run it. So you get the test script itself, and we have statements, hits, partials, misses. So these are just, I actually don't know what they mean in the context of CodeCov. But what's important here is the misses. So if you click on one of those links, you can actually look at the details for that file. And what it's telling you is that all of these lines are tested, and these ones that are highlighted red are not actually tested at all. So we have no test for the dangerous function. So this was just from the main CodeCov page. Are you talking about this page or the other one? So if you had this open, the token page open, you're going to need to refresh to see this. And if you refresh and it's not updated, try hitting the build now on drone.
Drone has detected that we are abusing it. PyCon is abusing it. Just think of this as a stress test. They should be thinking of this as a stress test of drone. You just have to wait for the build to finish, basically, for the first time. So it's started, build force pending. So Camille, surely the fact that all the lines of code are executed by the tests means that they're correct, right?
Yeah, so no. This, of course, is just saying that the test runs the code. It has nothing to do with whether the code is doing what it's supposed to do. So the tests could just be terrible tests, but they are at least running the code. So it's important to know the limitations of this like code coverage analysis.
Is there a way to see more details when you run it locally? Like I can just see like 85% of word count lib was covered, but can I see what was covered locally with the command line?
Maybe. Let's see. So you just ran. You're talking about if you just run.
Ran like py.test.
Oh, sure. I'll just copy it. Luiz might be better to answer that question. Did I not install the stuff? Ah. Look at me not reading the installation instructions before the tutorial. So I'm going to guess that there is more to this script than meets the eye.
So do you see the cov report flag?
Let's see. Cov report. So, yeah. Written to directory HTML_cov. And there we have a bunch of files. So you can probably just open index. And there is your HTML coverage report. So here it's just little green bars on the side instead of. I'm not sure all that is actually included in this. So you can highlight things. Gotcha. So yes, the answer is yes, you can see things locally. Okay, so has everybody gotten, Okay, so. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so at this point, we can just see we have some uncovered code, and maybe we should cover it. So let's try to write a test to actually cover it. Is this big enough for everybody? Could probably make it a little bigger. Okay, so write a new test, call it. Okay, so we'll do this. We know that this actually, that dangerous is going to throw a divide by 0 error. So we'll say this, word count lib dot and then if it gets this far, something went wrong. And what is it? Divide by 0 error. Is that it? I can't remember if that's the exception. We'll find out. And we're just going to not even care what the error actually is, because we don't really have to assert anything, but why not? Okay. So we can try running it again. Uh-oh. Did I make a syntax error?
Should be a 0 division error.
0 division error. See, I never have these sorts of errors in my code, so I don't really see them, you know. There we go. Come on. Must have used the wrong number of A's. What do we have? Oh, my local copy just doesn't have it at all, because I added it into a different thing. Okay. Sorry about that. Where is our... Okay. So now word count lib should have the code. Okay, there's our dangerous function. So now if I run py.test, we have nothing too interesting. There we go. So test dangerous passes.
Can you add the test code to the user test?
Yes. Good idea. Test word count dot. Okay. So we added a new test. This one's a function because it's not in a class. Okay. Okay. So we've pushed our changes up to GitHub. A couple of things should happen. For one, we should have, I'm going to have to go to this one. We have a new build pending. We can watch it if we want, as it spins away. So while we're waiting for the drone build, we can actually just run it locally again, the code coverage. Let's find it. Probably just do. Whoops. That is not what I want. Went away from my recursive search. Okay. Code dash dash. Okay. So now if we open up our report again, now word count lib has 100% coverage. If we click on that, the dangerous function is now tested. Yes, so there's some. Ah, yes. So this is, if you want to run py.test/code coverage report locally, and then you had to pip install something, pytestcov. Okay. So it looks like our build has succeeded. Now, if we go back to codecup.io, we have a new build, and it has not updated yet. It's just taking a little bit. Of course, we have to wait for all these services to talk to each other, so everything is not necessarily instantaneous. 1 minute. Nope. That's because I'm not looking at the right repository. Boop. There we go. To keep things confusing, I had 2 separate repositories with 2 different names. Yeah. Okay. So now we get the same results as the pytest cov here on codecup.io. And if we look at word count lib, we have the same sort of output. Has everybody managed to get codecup.io output? So any questions? So I think we're about ready for the coffee break. 5 minutes to the coffee break. Yes?
Is PyTest the one tool you always use for testing, or is
There's a number of different testing frameworks, test handling frameworks.
PyTest is the best?
PyTest is becoming more popular, I guess. I used to use nosetests for everything, and I've now been told that nose is not the cool thing to use anymore.
Technically, nose is no longer supported,
Yes, so
which is a different thing from not being cool.
things that are supported are cool. So, yeah, so PyTest is one framework you can use. I don't know, what other
Yeah,
testing frameworks might you?
there is the unit test framework that's on the default library, on the standard library, but it's a bit more difficult to write the tests. The benefits of PyTest is that you can write tests like you can use asserts, and also the output when you have a test that's failing, it shows you what are the results of on both sides, so you can compare things. So PyTest has nicer defaults. Basically nowadays I think it's the more popular one, or it's becoming the standard PyTest.
Does PyTest play with unit test properly?
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, I won't do that right now. So Titus has requested that I try to see if this works with a new branch. So you might have multiple branches you're working on. So we're going to make a new branch. The most dangerous.
One of the uses for this, as Luis was saying, is that a lot of the time you think, well, I'm the only person working on a project. This isn't, you know, I can run the test myself and make sure it works. And at least for us, even when we're the only ones working on a project, it's nice that we can make some changes and be working on a branch. And so here Camille's created a new branch of code to try out some new functionality, the more dangerous function. And I believe that since she's pushed this, if she goes to drone.io, it will actually build and test the more dangerous branch as well as her default master branch. So it monitors all of the different branches and just will tell you, oh, this branch isn't working. And so it's useful even in the personal context. It just sort of just makes sure that every time you do a push to GitHub that sort of things are basically working. This comes in super handy when you do collaborative work, of course, because if somebody else says, hey, here's if somebody else in the group is working on something and you want to know if it's correct or not, or if at least passing the tests, you don't have to rely on them to tell you that it's working. It's either red or green here. So it, usually we don't even do, in our lab we do code reviews. So we have pull requests against our main projects, and then we do code reviews on them, and we won't even bother looking at a branch that's not passing the tests, and that where code coverage has gone down, for example. It's like, you haven't even met the minimum criteria for somebody else in the group to look at your code. And that's sort of where most companies, I think many companies are these days, is this stuff is just running on whatever open source projects they rely on, or even the private ones. And you only really consider a project ready for looking at from other people once it's passed all of these other tests. And this will just run it for you and get it out of your way. And as I also said earlier, it'll make it so that whatever one of the things that I find most valuable about it for projects that I don't participate in on a regular basis is I don't ever have to wonder how to build a project. I don't have to read their installation instructions. I can go look at their test code, and their test code, if it runs in continuous integration, it has to tell the continuous integration machine what needs to be installed in order to run the test, because the continuous integration machine starts blank every time. So your dependencies have to be up to date on sort of the list of things you depend on has to be up to date, or else the continuous integration isn't going to work. So if they have continuous integration on a project, then I automatically know how to install that project and what its dependencies are and so on. And so it's really sort of
And it's
surprisingly useful.
It's also a test of if you want to start contributing to the project, because if you go to contribute to a project and they already have this infrastructure, it's something that you can rely, like you can go contribute to them. Because sometimes you try to go contribute to a project that doesn't have this, and it's very annoying to set up and run the tests and everything. So you can use this as your test to see if you want really to contribute to the project.
And I would say actually also for our project in the lab, our tests take a minute and a half to run. Camille's like, I don't know how long it takes to run. I just wait to get an email to tell me if it succeeded or failed, basically, right? So if it takes a little while to run, maybe when I'm working on code, I run just the tests that are relevant to that code, and before I commit, I check that it sort of works on my machine. But I run on a Mac, and our tests run on a Linux machine, and sometimes there are cross-platform differences. And at least with Drone, I think it only runs on Linux, but you can imagine situations where you have a Mac-built server and a Linux-built server if you have a project, or a Windows-built server if you have projects that need to work across all those machines. So that's where continuous integration really starts to come in handy.
Yeah, and our continuous integration server for the lab project checks other things too, so it will go check coding style to see if the code is well formatted and other stuff, which maybe you forget to test in your local computer. But every time you push these changes for other people to review, you can just cheat and say, okay, I checked everything and everything is running, because the server will complain and say, okay, you forgot to do this, and this is not working, so go fix this before. You can even, can you show one pull request on our repository? You can see that there are.
I don't think there are any that are working currently.
It's a good sign, because there will be a lot of bugs.
We just merged the last one that worked.
Yeah. Is there any red ones?
Oh.
Yeah. Here, yeah, you can see here that it's showing like this commit passed and these other ones didn't, and then it was fixed and passed again. So, and GitHub is nice enough to say if the tests are not passing, you can even merge the pull request. It will be red, and we can click the button. So
Don't merge it.
yeah, don't merge.
Finger on the launch codes.
The red crosses, they mean that the drone didn't finish successfully, right?
Yes, so these commits, when they were pushed, failed the tests. Or potentially coverage or any number of metrics.
Can you show how you create the HTML output reporting for the code?
Yes. So we had pasted that into the Etherpad, but the command here that you can run locally, I can zoom in a bit for you, is this py.test cov, and then you get this cov report format. And if there's a couple of other formats you can do. Okay.
How did you get it to show?
So when you run that, you get this this new folder called HTML_cov. So all I did was open that, and I opened index in a browser.
All right, coffee break for about 20 minutes. All right, is it coming out of the speakers? Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so before we move forward with some documentation stuff, I wanted to show you something that Camille mentioned towards the end of her, to me, towards the end of her presentation, which is there are actually these little badges that you can put on your project in your README, and I'm happy to show you how to do this. Basically, this is a different project called Sour Mash that I've been working on, and this is the readme.mark.md, and what these services like Drone and I think this is actually from. No, is this Coveralls? What's the other one that I was using? anyway, there's a couple different code coverage services, and I used the wrong one, basically. Anyway, so this is from Drone, and this is from Drone.io, and this is from something else, Coverage.io, I think. Anyway, and what they do is they give you a URL to an image that tells you that they generate a new image for the status of your project when the status changes. And so you just put in the URL to this image, and then if your build breaks, this image will be updated with build, failing, or coverage 92%. And so this continues, this is this trend of like trying to represent your project as something that other people should contribute to, or at least something that's stable. So here, build passing and coverage 89% is presumed to sort of be an announcement that like, hey, I sort of know what I'm doing with this project and you should come like join in. I don't worry about it, don't contribute to this project. But so the way you actually get that is if you go to, hang on a sec, if I go to drone.io with my actual account and I log in, I think if I go to this project, the Sour Mash project, and I think it's in settings, and you'll see status badges. This is the URL to the status for this particular project, and the markdown thing that displays it in the README is here. So you can just copy and paste this into a markdown document, or you can just load this image in whatever document you choose to represent. So you could actually, if you had a bunch of projects in your company that you were using drone.io for, you could actually have a single page that had, where you just listed all these, and you could get a dashboard more or less showing you which of your projects was at what stage and so on and so forth. So it's sort of a nice, handy little reporting. And I think there's probably, we don't actually use them, but I'm sure there's APIs to retrieve this status information and so on from these services. So there's ways to sort of build a more integrated dashboard, but by and large, these are probably good enough.
So you said you copy that from something?
Yeah, so what I did was I went to drone.io and settings, and then I went down to status badges. And this is the actual URL directly to the image. And then this is if you have a markdown document, this is the markdown text that will load that image and embed it within the document for you. So you can just copy and paste that directly into a markdown document on GitHub. Okay, so are there any questions at this point about any of the previous stuff talked about? No? Okay. So let's talk about something that, let me just see. I've now lost track of which, I have too many browser windows open. Tutorial agenda. So we're going to talk about documentation. And so if you remember, so first of all, documentation is one of these interesting things, like nobody cares about it until suddenly it's like absolutely critical that you have it. And your projects go through this phase transition where like you're the only one working on it, and of course you don't need documentation for your project because nobody else is using it. And then other people get interested in using your project, and then like 3 months later you hear like, hey dude, your documentation kind of sucks, or your documentation is non-existent and I could really use some. And then all of a sudden it starts to matter a lot. And so there's no solution for sitting down and writing some. So a theme that you may have already seen from today is like, if you don't have any tests, continuous integration isn't going to do any good. Okay, let's start at ground zero. Like, if you're not using version control, start using version control before other stuff. If you don't have any tests, write a few tests before starting to use continuous integration. There's no point in doing continuous integration and all this other stuff if you don't have the basics. If you don't have any documentation, don't worry about where to host it. Write some first. Okay. But if you have some, then there's this question of now documentation is this thing that you need to sort of write, and then worse than just writing the documentation, which is already sort of annoying to do if you prefer programming. Worse is that you sort of have to build a website around it. And I hate building websites. I probably built hundreds, bad ones all, but I probably built hundreds in my life. and I no longer want to. So everything I do now, all the websites I build are in Sphinx using restructured text. How many of you have heard of restructured text? Okay, so about half the room. I'll show you the format. It's another one. How many of you have used either restructured text or Markdown? Okay, so more people. So Markdown and restructured text are basically the same thing. They just have a different syntax. Markdown is supported natively by GitHub in their issues and in their I guess in their issues. And then restructured text is something that you can't use in GitHub issues without, I think you maybe can if you like mark it as restructured text, but anyway, but it's rendered by GitHub when it's in files. So here I have these two files that I've already written. This is the library documentation for word count lib. And if you look at the raw file, this is what it looks like underneath, right? It's pretty much just the same thing as Markdown. It's just rather than using pound signs to indicate titles, I use underlines and overlines, and then rather than using a single backquote to indicate verbatim, you use double backquotes. But it's basically just text that you can more or less read without rendering, but it's nicer if it's rendered like so. Okay, so it's actually really easy to just write this sort of stuff down and post it on GitHub, and then this will just be a file. I don't know how many of you see what I'm doing here, but basically, if you go to the PyCon tutorial project and you go into the doc, I'm just clicking on these .rst files and they get rendered. Okay, so there's a couple situations where you actually want more than this. This is sort of okay, like here it is, here's my documentation, I can link to it, I can even build a website that links to this. One key point that's sort of going unstated here is that my documentation is tied to the version of my source code, right? So so Camille, who did add tests for her dangerous code, she didn't write documentation for it, which is sort of a party foul. So ideally, when she updated, and in fact, our checklists for our own project in the lab do have questions about documentation. So when you write code artifacts, you're supposed to write some documentation artifacts, and they're all in the same version-controlled repository. So that's why we have them in GitHub in the first place. And then the question becomes, what if you have a lot of documentation? How do you don't really want to give people like a list of links in GitHub? Say like just browse through these 15 pages until you find the thing you're looking for. You really want something that's a little more holistic, a little more integrated, and potentially something that's skinnable and searchable and has the version number in it. So just to show you what this looks like, and this is the lab project. And so this is our primary software, and two features of this. One is there's a table of contents, there's a next topic, and there's a search. This is all just produced automatically by Sphinx from our underlying restructured text documents. We don't have to maintain this. The documents are linked together automatically by the Sphinx package that we're going to use. And then the other thing is, if you look at the URL, it's khmer.readthedocs.io, which is the service that we're going to use, read the docs, and there's a version on it. So this is version 2.0 of the documentation that is for version 2.0 of our software. And if you go to version 1.4, maybe this will work. Excellent, it works. Okay, it actually does work. This is an older version of our software. It's a different branch in the repository. It's still there for people that are using that version. So that's why we don't want to just host our documentation on GitHub in the repository. We want something that lets us have multiple versions of it, that lets us search, that gives us a table of contents, and other such things. Clear so far? Okay, so here's the awesome thing. It's going to take like 5 minutes to go from our wondrous documentation that is sitting in this directory somewhere. Can I do that? Will that work? Yeah. It's going to take us about 5 minutes, plus a little bit of install pain, to go from this directory to basically that hosted website that's automatically updated. And whenever we change these files, that website will get automatically updated from the version control repository. And that's what read the docs does. There are a lot of other services that do this. Probably the most commonly used one is the github.io that actually automatically builds this from your source code repository. I don't think they do versioning. So if you wanted to have multiple simultaneous versions of your documents, and I don't know if you noticed the subtle signs. I don't know if you noticed the EN up here. Oh, sorry, the EN up there. That you can actually have multiple languages of your documentation hosted on the same website, compiled from similar underlying. I don't actually have any idea how it works, but you can do it. So, okay, so that's what we're gonna do next. Right. So just to check off the little boxes, REST documentation, GitHub rendering does half of what we want, which is automatically update the pretty rendered site from the things from the source files. And then we're actually going to do things that give you a table of contents and a search and automatic update and multiple versions. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to run something called Sphinx. And Sphinx is a quick question? No, okay. And Sphinx is okay, we're all computer geeks to some extent, right? We're at PyCon, there's no escaping it. In a good way, right? We're self-identifying. Sphinx, like everything else in the computer world, you can't just have documentation. That wouldn't be cool. You need a documentation compiler. And so what Sphinx does is essentially compile your documentation. And of course, as soon as a compiler comes in, you need to have configuration files and the whole thing and a make file. And so that's actually what we're going to produce now. But it's going to do it all for us. So those of you, almost all for us, we have to give it a little bit of information. Yeah, soon we'll have a compiler. Anyway, yeah, okay. So we should write a project compiler that, no? Okay. Okay, so what we want to do is go, and I don't actually know if this will work in, I don't actually know if this will work on, how this will work on Windows, so this will be exciting for those of you who are Windows users. But what we want to do is go into the doc directory of the thing that we checked out. So you should have this sitting on your laptop. You should have this doc directory. And this is this directory that looks like this. It just has these 3 files in it. It's in the GitHub repository that you cloned already. So it's where you've been running your tests and editing your files and so on. And we're going to run the command sphinx-quickstart. Okay? And if you want to follow along with the documentation instead, you can click on Sphinx First Steps in this issue, Sphinx and Posting to Read the Docs, which is issue number 3 in the PyCon tutorial. So you run Sphinx Quick Start. Sorry, I'll post somewhere I have an Etherpad. And I'll just, Sphinx docs. Okay, whoops. That's above Camille's exciting new code. Sorry, dangerous new code. And so it's at the bottom of the Etherpad. Okay, so I'm going to run Sphinx Quick Start, and it's going to ask me a bunch of stuff. Now, I want to make sure I run it inside the doc directory. And so I'm going to say the root path for the documentation is the default, which is the current directory. It's going to say something confusing. I'm just going to hit enter. It's going to say something else confusing. I'm just going to hit enter. And now there's something it won't let you hit enter on, which is the project name. And so you should name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter what you name it. This is purely for human consumption. So I'm going to name this PyCon is awesome. Okay. The author names, PyCon doc.d awesome. Doesn't matter what it is. And the project version, I'm just going to name it 1.0. And just keep on hitting enter at this point. And I think at this point we can get by with just hitting enter and taking the defaults. Here's something that's important. You can't see it at the bottom of the screen. Sorry, let me scroll this up, which is the source file suffix. So in the bad old days, I used to name my restructured text files .txt because they are text files. GitHub doesn't render them automatically if they're .txt files, so I started to name them RST files, and so here you have to say source file suffix is .rst. In this case, it's true. If you have existing documentation and restructured text, you just need to pick whatever suffix you used. And here the point is Sphinx will actually find those files for you, sort of. And so you want to give it the right name. And you can give it multiple suffixes, and you can use Markdown in here and all this other stuff that we're not going to talk about. But please, if you have a question about whether or not you could use Sphinx for your current project, please feel free to ask either now or later via email. Okay, Name of your master document without the suffix. So this is going to be your main page, and index is fine, so just hit enter. And then there's a bunch of questions. And so Sphinx actually is a documentation compiler. So it will build HTML, and it will build EPUB, and it will build PDF, and it will build LaTeX, and it will build, right, it'll do all this stuff. Man pages, very useful. So I'm just going to say no, and I'm just going to keep on hitting no. And sorry, I changed my window size, so now it's like all screwed up. And I'm just going to keep on hitting no. Hang on a sec. OK, I get to a make file and a Windows command file can be generated, so I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to create a Windows command file, and I'm going to say yes, and then it's done. OK, sorry, so there's a question?
So I saw something about this doc strings. If you say yes there, will it automatically take the doc strings and then generate the APIs and stuff like that?
So doc tests. So there's two different things. It can extract the doc strings and put them in the documentation. So if you have doc strings in your source code, it can pull them out from your source code and put them in your API documentation. Yes, automatically. And then there's also doc tests. It can actually run. It can include support for running your doc tests, I believe, as well if you have doc tests. But yeah, so it is a programmer's documentation compiler. I mean, first of all, it's a documentation compiler, so nobody but a programmer would use it. But it's also, it does have a bunch of plugins. And there's actually a lot more plugins for it than come with it. So there's a lot of things you can do. I should say, sorry, just to sort of back up, when we looked at this documentation, I don't know if any of you saw any similarities with the Python documentation, but it actually turns out that the Python documentation is in fact written in Sphinx, or written in restructured text and uses Sphinx. So Sphinx was built for the Python, was in fact built around the idea of the Python documentation. So, so it's likely to be maintained for a while.
And it's also nice if you want to explore what you can do with Sphinx, you can go check how Python builds their documentation.
Right, yeah. So I think this is actually one of the key cases where the doc strings for Python functions are extracted and put in the Python documentation, I think. So, OK. OK, so now we've got this. If you do an ls, if you look at the directory, actually I'll bring it up here. See, there's a bunch of stuff that's been added. The build directory, the static, and the templates directory have been added. There's a conf.py that you can look at that was actually filled out by all those questions you answered. And there's a make.bat, which is for Windows users, and there's a makefile, which is for Unix users. And I realized I forgot to tell the Mac folk to install make, which comes with Xcode and the Xcode command line utilities. So this may not work for some of you. So I apologize. I didn't realize that until this morning. I was like, so you may not be able to do the next step if you're on a Mac. OK, so the next step is you type make HTML. And on Windows, I think you should be able to also just type make space HTML. Do you have? I don't know if you. I think it figures out the .bat file automatically. But anyway, try typing make HTML. Let me just put this in my Etherpad. And when you run make HTML, it'll run Sphinx. And it'll create this directory build_build/HTML. And this is now a completely generated file that doesn't have your documentation in it. It's very anticlimactic, sorry. So if you open index.html, you'll see welcome to PyCon is awesome's documentation, and there will be no contents. So, but this is success. So could I get a green sticky from all of the people that have gotten to the point where they have failed to integrate their documentation into Sphinx? Perfect. And if you need help, please just put a red sticky up. And we'll just take a second. Okay, this is a poor rating for this executing a bat file. Wow, okay. Start process. So something like command.exe, I don't know. No? Try typing cmd and running the Unix, running the...
I did. It ran in the command window. It just didn't.
Okay, great, great. Okay, sorry, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just.
So here's the problem. If you look at this index.rst file, and I think I can show this in a prettier... Nope. If you look at the index.rst file, you'll see that Sphinx Quick Start didn't automatically populate it with your documentation. What it did was it created an empty index.rst file, and in there it put this talk tree command. And the talk tree command stands for table of contents tree. And all the file names that you put below this indented will be the things that are compiled into your documentation. So interestingly, Sphinx Quick Start will not automatically integrate your existing RST files into its documentation, but it will helpfully tell you that it's not. And that's not actually snark. If you do this, do make clean, make HTML, it will actually say, warning, this document's not included in any talk tree. And that's good. There are some situations where you have files that you don't really want in your table of contents, but that are important elsewhere. And so here, Sphinx is just telling you, hey, you have this restructured text file and we're not including it. So it's sort of warning you. In this case, we do want both of them in the talk tree. So if you can open up a text editor and go into index.rst and put in library and command line. So basically, this is in the index.rst file. We're adding the words library and command line on 2 separate lines with a blank line after max depth. Right? It's just like programming. Who doesn't want to do more programming for their documentation? Right? Yeah, well. So there's, as far as I know, there's no way to add them automatically. Yeah. So what I would do, okay, so this is not, I apologize in advance. What I would do is something like this, which would give me, I'd list all the RST files, I'd cut off everything after the period, and then I'd list them here, and then I'd copy and paste that into my index.rst if I had 100 files, right? I'd go to another program. I'd do some more programming. But so there's no way for it to automatically, as I understand. This is becoming a test, right? Like, so find dot, so first of all, since this is a tutorial, just in case you're interested. Yep, this is how I would get to get a list of all .rst files in a directory. And then if you actually want to do it recursively, you can use the find command. That doesn't seem right. Ah. So this is one of maybe a dozen to 100 ways to find all of the RST files in your directory, print them out, cut off the leading period, then, yeah, anyway, you could, it's not really, anyway, this will work. So you can find all the RST files. Yes. So this is what my index.rst file now looks like. It's exactly like it was before, but I've added 2 lines library and command line in. Huh? There might well be a way to do it automatically with Sphinx Quick Start, but I don't. Probably not with Sphinx Quick Start, actually. All right. So we're all good. If we're all good, yeah, go ahead. You do need to have an empty line. If you don't have an empty line, it took me messed me up for 15 minutes this morning. If there's no empty line, it doesn't recognize either max depth or the things there. So max depth is how many files should it recurse down. So it'll do something like if you have a file that has a set of headings within it, it will actually bring the headings into the talk tree as well. And so the max depth says how many layers of headings do you want brought into the table of contents. Okay, so if we get to this point and we now type make HTML again, now it doesn't output any errors. It says build finished. And if you open build HTML and you go to index.html, you'll now see something a little more interesting, which is you'll see library functions and command line interface are now in there. And if I click on library functions, you'll see that it's nicely formatted. It's even got Python syntax highlighting, and life is good. Okay. So please flag down somebody if you ran into any trouble getting.
Is that you don't have the left nav?
I don't because I'm using a different template, a different skin. You can configure. Everything's configurable. But here's the interesting thing. And I don't actually know what the answer is. If you push this, once we put this on read the docs, I don't actually know if it'll automatically put the sidebar on, because read the docs has a different style. There's a variety of ways to change the style. You don't have to follow along with this, but if you look in conf.py is what Sphinx Quick Start built, and in there is a statement somewhere in here. There is a statement, really, I swear. So this is the syntax highlighting style. There's a theme, HTML theme, and this, you can change this. I think if we change this to plain, here's a girl. You don't have to do this. Please don't do this. If I do this, there's no theme, plain. I don't know what's the default theme? Is it default? It worked, it's probably right. So here's now, I've changed the whole look and feel of the site by changing the theme. There's a couple themes out there. Alabaster's sort of the white, like clean, pretty. Yeah, alabaster white, exactly. Okay. So I'm just going to change that back. Okay, searching for default turns out not to be a good, there we are, alabaster. Okay, so the last thing we have to do before we can build this into a read the docs site is we actually have to add the relevant files into version control so that they're on GitHub. And by relevant files, I don't mean the documentation, which is already there. I don't mean the HTML, which we want to auto-generate every time we make a change. I mean the configuration for Sphinx. And that configuration is what read the docs will use to build the Sphinx documentation. So to do that, there's actually a little command in here that I will copy. It's here. You need to run something like this. And I will put it in here. And what this does, whoa, there. What this will do is it will add, sorry, let me scroll this down for you. What these commands will do is add the index.rst, the makefile and make.bat, conf.py, the static and the template directories into your Git repository. This will commit them, and this will push them to your repo. And now I have to be a little bit careful because I have correctly done this from my demo account. So I'm just going to run these things. Git add. And then I'm going to commit. And then I'm going to push to my master. And here it's going to ask me for my, for my username, password. And now when I go to Okay, now I've like totally lost track of. There we are. There's nobody. When I go to my GitHub repository and I go to PyCon tutorial Titus, you'll see that the last, so it caught my username from my git config on my command line, but I'm in the right repository. And you can see the comment is added Sphinx docs. And if I click on this, it'll tell me that what I did was I showed 4 changed files, and I included doc make file and other things in there. Okay. So please get to the point where when you go look at your Git repository for this tutorial, you have in the doc directory, you have makefile, conf.py. You really need our conf.py and index.rst, and I think the others can are empty at the moment. Okay? So get to this point and then put up a green sticky. Put up a red sticky if you're running into problems. Yes? Yes. So the underscore build directory was not included because that's created automatically by Sphinx when that's the build directory. That just contains the generated documentation. So you don't want that in version control. I don't think it matters necessarily, but it's unnecessary. So, okay.
So if you want to, for instance, have reference from PyPI and
I'm sorry, say that again.
if you want to use, for instance, your PyPI references on your documentation for RST.
Your feed.
No, PyPI from LaTeX.
Your something from LaTeX.
Yeah, so you have your references in PyPI, right?
Yes.
And you want to
Yeah.
include them. So how do you do that? So first you want to talk about this. These are the scientific references to a paper or something.
So, okay, so the question was, just to repeat the question, how do you, if you have a scientific project, how do you include citation references, projects that you want to, scientific citations in your project? So there's a couple answers. One is that Markdown is working on a way is working on extensions to support scientific citations. I don't think that restructured text supports scientific citations specifically, but it does. Look at that. So, but I don't think you can include, you can't include, so BibTeX, you have to have something that processes the BibTeX into this kind of format. But once it's in this kind of format, you'll get, you can generate these kinds of citations, references from them. My guess is that there's a utility out there to do it, because a lot of scientists use this, but I don't know what it is. There is also a math extension that will let you put equations right in your restructured text as well. So a lot of scientists do use this. In fact, it uses MathJax, which is what Jupyter uses. Yeah, so I should say there is a wide and wacky world of everything you can imagine, and most of it's like 20% broken and 80% working for like blogging and converting Jupyter notebooks and R Markdown and everything else back and forth between these different formats. So Pandoc is what lets you convert between restructured text and Markdown, and there's just a ton of stuff out there. The core Sphinx stuff is pretty stable because it's used for the Python documentation. These other tools it's still an evolving ecosystem, I would say. I really like the Jupyter Notebook. Like, I'm just going to put it all in Jupyter Notebook and let Jupyter Notebook handle it for me. But yeah, different set of conversations. From BibTeX?
Yeah, from, from the, before the build, in the index RST,
Yeah.
there's a way to add the current documentation.
There is?
Yes.
With Sphinx Quick Start?
Yes, with the, you have to edit, and I don't know if it's from Pixar, but I have to edit the index and add the glob, and with an S.
Oh, there's a glob command. Okay, so of course. I'm gonna just do a little Google Sphinx talk tree glob. You can use globbing, and if you haven't heard of globbing, all it means is that you can put wildcards in. So if I go into my, you don't need to do this. Thank you. If I just put in glob and I do star, then it will automatically find all of my, and it works for under */*, right? So, yeah. So globbing is, I don't know where it comes from, but globbing is the expand wildcards term for expanding wildcards. There's actually a glob module in Python, for those of you who haven't heard of it, that lets you, like, you can call glob.glob and then like a set of patterns, and it will actually find all the files in the directory that match those patterns and give them to you as a list. Too much information, I know. Anyway, okay, so everybody that has this sorry, I'm like totally losing track of my windows. Everybody that has conf.py and index.rst in their GitHub repo should have a green sticky up. And I think we're pretty good in terms of moving forward. Okay, so what we're going to do next is tell the Read the Docs website about this. So yet another website, yet another service provided for free, which means it works like 95% of the time in this case. And they're really awesome people, and there's ways to give them money. So if you use them a lot, think about it. So go to readthedocs.org. And if you use a lot of Python packages, odds are you recognize this website because they host an awful lot of Python documentation. And click on, you should already have signed up, so click on Login. And I think I've used the account Titus demo, and I need to go find my password. Okay, log in, sign in. And you should, if you haven't done this before, you should end up, as soon as you log into the Read the Docs website, you should get to this URL. Just put it at the bottom here. And this URL just contains your dashboard. And the first thing you want to do, instead of import a project, say connect to GitHub. And connect to GitHub will do the thing that we've been doing before, where it says, you basically connect to GitHub, and it says, oh, Read the Docs wants to be able to access your account. And here, for those of you that were listening to Luiz earlier about the security question, what Read the Docs wants is it wants access to personal user data, repository webhooks and services, commit statuses, and organizations and teams. So what this repository webhooks and services means is that it has access to be notified whenever you change your GitHub repo. It will be notified. So it can install a service on GitHub that will notify it. It's not, I don't think it's a security hole any more than giving read access to your repo is. It's basically giving it read-only access to your repo. And this is read-only access to your list of organizations and teams you belong to. So I'm going to click Authorize Application. And now it makes me type in my password, which I think is this. And now, if I go to, I don't remember if, let me go back to, sorry, how do I do this? I go back to My Projects, and I go to Import a Project. So this fails for me because, there we are. There's a few minor bugs in there. But you should get to the point where you can import a project, and I'm going to import, and I actually have to refresh this, and hopefully it will work this time. It's PyCon tutorial Titus. And you guys should see, you should all see something that's much simpler than me because, anyway. And if you click on PyCon tutorial Titus and you click on plus or whatever the one is, it's going to give you a bunch of defaults. Just say next, just say that's fine. And now you're done. And now you want to say build a version latest and click on build. And what you should see is you should get to a page that looks like this where it says recent builds, triggered version latest 0 minutes ago. And what it's now doing is it's grabbing your .rst files and your conf.py and building that site for you. So please, don't worry about putting up a green sticky, but if you need help getting to this, because I went through like 3 web pages really quickly, just put up a red sticky. All you need to do is keep on clicking yes, right? You know, can it have access to my bank account details? Yes. Can it delete my social security number? Yes. So first of all, I'm now in the fun situation. How many of you are, it's like still building? Yeah, okay. Click reload every now and then. So we're in the fun situation where literally every single developer of Read the Docs is in this building, which is both good and bad. It's good because it means that if we can identify them, we can corner them and make them work for us. It's bad because it means they're probably not paying attention to the Read the Docs server right now. So this morning I actually reported a bug, and the tweet I got back was, hey, we're all in a tutorial right now. We'll get back to you soon. I was like, okay. Okay, so while this is running, I just want to say one thing. So we got this question from the back, which is, and I feel like we should have maybe done a diagram, but so there's 3 different things going on here. There's your project, and your project is whatever repository, Git repository in this case, you're working with. And that can be a private or a public Git repository, and it can be behind a firewall or not behind a firewall, and you can, and whatever. Then there's the set of software that we're using to run things in your project. And here we're mostly talking about Python, obviously, but also Sphinx, py.test, and coverage, these are all packages that you can download and you can install locally and you can run locally. You don't need to access any servers at all. If you can get your source code to your laptop, you can use py.test, you can use Sphinx, and you can use coverage. And then there's the services on top of that. And the services on top of that are Drone, well, GitHub, Drone, Read the Docs, and Cov, whatever the heck we used, CodeCov.io, right? And those services need access to your source code. There's 2 problems with that. One is they need standardized access to your source code. So if you're running some wonky server, or even sometimes in some cases GitLab, for example, locally in your company, it may not work. Those services may not work with that, right? Drone.io may not know how to talk to whatever server you use in your company. The other problem is, and you have to, I have a lot of sympathy for this, is that some companies don't want to give a third-party service access to their source code. Like, fair point. So you can't use the services in that case, but you can still use the coverage. You can still use the coverage package, the py.test package, the Sphinx package. I think those are the main ones that we used. And there are local servers that you can, if you can figure out how to convince your company that this kind of thing is useful, there are local servers you can install that do most of what we're talking about here. You just have to have somebody else install, or somebody install and maintain them locally. So that's the trade-off, right? You're either willing to ship all your source code to a third-party server to have them run this stuff for you, or you got to do it yourself in-house. Does that? And I'm happy to point you at those packages. I forget, we were using Jenkins for a while, which was a continuous integration build server that ran on a server that we hosted, in effect. I mean, it's still running? We should probably turn that off, unless we're using it. But anyway, so we started that way, and then these services came along, and since our software is all open source, anyway, It's like, yeah, fine, have access to it to run these things because it's convenient. So those are, I don't know if that separation is clear. We'll try and put a diagram together.
Do you use drone yourself, or is there other services?
So I use drone for, hey, Luiz? Luiz? What do we use on Kachmer? Do we use drone?
No.
What are we using? Jenkins? Okay, so we're still using Jenkins on. So on our main software project, I'm using drone on the Sour Mash project, which is another project, because drone didn't exist when we started our maiden project, and we got it all working, and we stopped mucking with things, right? Like, the end goal is to actually make progress on the project, not like, I don't know. I don't know. You know, in some sense, the question is, what are you trying to get out of it? And I would say mostly what I'm looking to do is to get out of it is the ability to just build and run my tests. And the coverage integration's nice, but that's sort of the only other thing I really care about.
You put Jenkins on the same local server as you have your Git repo? No?
So the question was, where did we install Jenkins, which is a third-party software? And what we actually did was we had a cloud server that we were running on Amazon or Rackspace that actually had its whole own installation of everything, and that would pull down our source code. And that's nice when you have customized requirements. So Camille was just saying that for one of her software packages, she can't use drone because all the stuff that needs to be installed for her software takes too long for drone to run it. So if you have something that takes an hour to configure a server from scratch, like you can't, you know, drone is not going to be happy with you. So there's a couple trade-offs, but yeah.
What did exactly this coverage service do?
So say this again.
What did the coverage service do? I didn't get that.
Okay, so the question is, what did the codecov.io service do? So all the codecov.io service did, there's sort of two things it did. And I don't know if I have it set up on mine anymore. I think I deleted it. But you know, it made a pretty diagram and did some reporting, right? So, and you could have gotten that information several other ways, but it's on a web page. Yeah. It will also, the other thing it will do is it will trigger an email to you or trigger a failed build status on GitHub if coverage falls below a certain level. Now, again, you could code that into your drone.io build as this is a failure if coverage goes below this level, but it's sort of nice to have it tied to a website that lets you investigate, you know, so let me think about how to say this. So what drone does is it runs stuff. And at the end of the day, it's happy if all the stuff it runs has an exit code of 0, which means success in Unix. And it's unhappy if it has an exit code of other than 0, which is what we were hacking earlier. So drone, if you have what's called an artifact of a build, drone doesn't necessarily do anything intelligent. And by what I mean by artifact is either a compiled version of your package or HTML documentation or something else, performance information. It just gives, it will store the file for you, but it won't interpret the file. What codecov does is it takes the coverage information from running your tests and actually interprets it and displays it and gives you access to sort of understand it better. Does that, so it's sort of a, yeah. All right. So where were we? Oh, right, we were looking at our docs. So if you go up to view docs now, you will see the same bug that I reported earlier. And if you hit reload, it will continue to be a problem. And maybe if I build version latest again, it will work. Does anybody, when they click on view docs, does anybody see their documentation? So it's only me, or not only me. You don't have to be logged in. These are public.
Other people are having, a bunch of people have had issues with the build fails, or it looks like an internal server error.
Okay, so this is the bug I reported earlier. So they have a couple different servers. Anyway, so let's just pretend that it worked for everybody, and they'll fix it while they're here at the conference. If you see one of them, say, hi, I heard about Read the Docs. It looks awesome. I'm just having this little problem. They'll love you forever.
Click on those links.
Yeah, if you click on the,
You have to trigger those actions.
click on it and then click view docs.
Okay. I don't think Okay. That rationally shouldn't work, but if it does, it's good enough for me. So now you can see this is the documentation that we built. Now though, it's at this URL that will get automatically updated whenever you update your thing. So I want to. Did it change the theme? They have their own the version of the Alabaster theme. Yeah. So let me show you one quick thing before we go to. What time do we have? Is it too late? It's too late. Okay. So we won't do. We have the information on packaging on the website, and I'll show it to you briefly before we end. But I want to show you one quick thing, which is if you go to your. How many of you have seen the the on-site GitHub editor before? I'm seeing a few hands. Okay, and some nodding. So this is. I actually think Titus-node. I actually think this is super cool. So just to sort of see if I can demo this for you. So suppose I go into my doc directory and I or somebody else sees that there's a mistake. So here I have library functions and I see, oh, there's a mistake in here. I can go up to this little, if I'm logged in and I'm on a repository, actually it doesn't matter whether I'm logged in as the owner of this repository or somebody else, I can click on this little pencil. It says edit this file. And it will bring up a text editor in my browser window. And I can come down and I can say, note that Camille Scott's contributions to this repository are as of yet untested. Okay. And now I can say micro shame Camille. And I can say commit changes. And you can see, first of all, it's in the new, so I've edited this file online. I've committed those changes without using the command line or anything. They show up on the restructured text here. And if I go back to my read the docs page and I look at builds, it should have started a new build. So this latest build is because I edited it. When I edited the file, it's the same as me editing the file locally on my computer and pushing it to GitHub. Read the docs got the notification change, and in theory, actually updated the readthedocs.io page automatically from what I was doing, right? So this is sort of the advantage is that, again, as with drone.io, as with the coverage, this stuff all just sort of happens invisibly, and most of the time it just works. And you get these things updated without really having to worry about manually and personally updating them. And just to give you one last point here, we do. Oh, it goes to 440. Oh, perfect. Okay, so I'm being macro shamed by Camille here. So I'll switch over to the packaging in a second. If you go back to here, did you notice how en latest is up there? Latest is always the master branch of your GitHub repository. If you had versions in your GitHub repository, you can go to versions here. You can go to admin on read the docs, and you can come to versions, and you can actually set up other versions to be of your. So in this case, we only have two branches. We only have one branch, master, in the repository. But if you had different versions in your GitHub repository, you would now be able to say that I would like master to be built, and I would like it to be, and I would like to show up under a particular URL. So you can. That's how we do the Kachmer versions that I showed you earlier. You can specify. You can have branches on your GitHub repo that are tied to specific URLs. And essentially, those just get, every time you release a new version, you can have a version of your documentation that's tied to a particular version of the source code. So that's how you would do versions. Go ahead. I don't actually know what happens if you set it as private. My guess is that only you can see it when you, with a logged in.
GitHub repo can see it still?
I don't know. Sorry.
When you do the inline edits on GitHub,
Yeah.
there's an actual commit that's happening behind
Yes.
be in the history?
Yeah, so actually if you look, you can see that I have, you can see here's the commit. Microshame Camille is the name, and then you can see, yeah. And so actually you can do almost everything. I don't think you can you do conflict resolution via the web interface? You can do editing, you can do pull requests, and you can do merging all within the GitHub framework. You just can't resolve conflicts between different branches. So you need to go to command line to do that, yeah. So, but it's pretty handy for documentation editing because, like, why do I need to like go to the command line and pull up a file and like to correct a typo? And so this one is. The other thing that I didn't highlight, but if you're logged in as somebody else, so here I have write permissions to this. If you went to this repository and you edited the file, it would auto-generate a pull request into my repository when you hit save. So you can do, yeah. Anyway, any other questions at this point? So I should say I've been using Read the Docs for ever since it was created, whenever that was, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it's very robust and stable, so this bug is they just switched to a new domain, so I'm sure it's a temporary thing. Anyway, all right, so if there are no more questions, then why don't we go forward with packaging? You okay? So this will just be 10, 15 minutes of how to create a setup.py, and we didn't already create one, right? Okay, anyway. And post it to the Python package index. Okay? Here.
Hi, hello, okay. Instructions, issues. Okay, so next thing, we're going with issue number, which issues? Number 6. So if we look at, sure. So what's happening here is, if we go back to our, no, this is not the one I want. This is the one I want. Okay. So these are the files we have in our repository now. And for creating a what is a package? First things first. On Python, we have something called the Python package index. So before we try to install, well, we didn't try. We actually installed CodeCov and PyTest and all these other packages using pip install. So when we run pip install, what is happening behind the scenes is that we are going to the PyPI server, the Python package index, and these packages are listed there, and then we can install. So what we are going to do now is we'll be able to make a package and upload to PyPI, and then we can install our own package. But before we can actually upload something here on PyPI, we need to add a new file to our repository. So for example, this is the file listing that I have. And this new file that we need to create is called the setup.py. And it will list some properties and some things that we need to have for PyPI to recognize what is our package. I will use the web interface now. So if you're in your, you're here in the first page of your repository, and you go here to create new file. It will open a page where you can edit and add new stuff. So we are going to type here setup.py and paste this. I'm going to paste this on the Etherpad. Okay, so this is the content we're going to have. And one thing we are going to change here is that each person will set up a different name for the package so we can all upload to PyPI. So here, instead of using this very nice default name of proj, we are going to use different name. I'm gonna go with PyCon tutorial Luiz, which is probably not taken. And what's happening on this file is that we are listing the name of the package we have, initial version 0.1 may not be the best version now that we already have documentation talk about version 1.0. So let's go with version 1.0. That's a typo. And you can add some description on what your package does. And these other configurations here is, we are saying that our package has some functions that we defined in this file, word count.lib. And we also have this script that we can run after we installed, which is word count. And these are just some details so we can run the tests easily. And there's a lot of stuff you can use in this setup function and parameters you can pass here. We are not going through all of them because there are a lot. But later on the issue on here, if you go to this link on the Python Package Authority, they have a very nice guide explaining everything you can put on your setup and what are the best practices on how you set up everything. So, but for now, you're just changing the name and the version. And we can add setup.py. Oops. And commit the new file. And right now, we have this new file here, the setup.py. And this makes our directory a package, but we don't have this available on PyPI already. Not that automatic, we need to go there. But what we can do is, let me get all, I change it here. Okay, the setup.py is here, but if I do pip install and give the name of the directory, we can already, we need the slash. We can already install our package locally in our computer just from having that. And if I try to run word count, we can see that the script is here, and it's the same script we were using before. Luiz license, and we can see this running. So now that we have this amazing package, we want to make this available for other developers to use, and all the people in the world. And okay, setup.py. So next step is how we post the project to PyPI. And just to avoid posting packages to PyPI and they will never be updated since we are just testing this, there is another server available, which is testpypi.python.org, which has the same interface of PyPI, but you can use as a test platform to see if the package is all if everything is correct before posting to PyPI. So that's what we are going to do, but it's very easy to change from one to the other once you tested everything. Well, first thing we need to do is that we need to create an account on test.py, so we need to go to this link, and I'm going to copy this on the Etherpad. Did everyone manage to create this setup.py? Yep. Okay, so what I did here is I was at the the PyCon tutorial, I went one level up, and then I did pip install and the name of the directory with the slash at the end. So pip is smart enough to figure out, okay, there's a setup.py inside this directory, so I can install the package.
And then it's in your system packages, in your Python installation.
Yeah, I was using a virtual env, but yeah, it was. Yeah, yes, yeah, yes.
Unless you're in a virtual env, then it goes into your virtual env site packages.
Yeah, and if you don't want to keep this here, you can always just remove the package. I don't know why it's still processing, so pip uninstall. And yes, so then it's removed from my system. Okay, so PyPI. Not this one, test.pypi. And it's very useful that test.pypi has this red ribbon here saying that's the testing site. So what we are going to do is, I'm already logged in. So we are going here to register. And you need to create a username and a password for you. So everyone create, just create another user because I already have one. And this username is not related to the official PyPI server, so you can create any username you want here. It's a disposable username. And the password is, I think they say it needs to be at least 8 characters. So something. And you can also use an email address here if you someday forgot what password you used, so it might be useful. And click register. Okay, you do need to set the email address. You can leave it. Okay, which is fair. 16 characters, really? Okay. Okay, finally. So you do need to remember your username and password from this step. Next thing we need to do is I will move my PyPI RC out of the way because I already have one. Okay, so now in your computer you need to create a configuration file so PyPI knows what are your credentials, and if we follow the instructions here, there is a description where the file needs to be saved. On Windows, it's a bit annoying because you don't have the shortcut for your home directory. But we need to edit this file, so PyPI RC, where is the etherpad? And the content of this file needs to be something like this. And this is just a configuration file, so it just say, okay, we'll have 2 different index. So PyPI will be the official, the one from, and PyPI test will be the test one that we are using now. And this repository will be the same as it's listed here. You have different usernames and password for the official PyPI and for the test PyPI. We are gonna change this one and put our username and password. I think I already copied this. Oops, what happened here? Try to be smart. Username. Okay. Oops. Yes. Okay, no, it's correct. So what I'm going to do is that I'll create the file. In this case, I'm going to use vi PyPI-rc. And it's an empty file. I just paste everything. Okay, and then we need to update here, put the username. Irber2. And it's a bit annoying, but you need to put your password here, so you might want to protect this file on your computer, because anyone that has this information can upload packages. So I need to remember to delete this, and my password was PyCon is awesome 16. I think. I hope so. And then here you use your, we don't have a username now. I do already have one on PyPI. And then you need to put your password. I don't remember what is the password. But you don't actually need to change this second part. Change just the PyPI test part. Okay, so let's do some green stickers, pink stickers. So if you added the PyPI RC file to your, with your configuration, put the green sticker up. If you're still working on it, work on it. If you have any problems, please put the pink sticker up. There's some.
You need, I think that's fine, but I think you just need the username and password you created. Hi.
Okay, so there is a syntax error on this. Sorry for that. This needs to be, you need to put 2 white spaces before the PyPI server names here. So if you already have the green sticker, please go back and put the 2 spaces, or we will have an error on the next comment.
No, I mean, if I uploaded my... No, so Python packaging, that's once you create a package on the central Python packaging list, I don't think it's easy to delete it.
No, so the question here was, if I create a Python package on PyPI, can I delete it? And the answer is no, you can do that. You can't delete packages from PyPI. And there's a reason for that. Some months ago, like 2 months ago, there was an issue on the Node.js community, the leafpad package. And what happened there is that the author deleted the package from the package repository for Node, and it broke like an absurd amount of packages because there was a lot of people depending on that package. So on PyPI, you can't remove a file once it's uploaded there. And so that's one of the reasons why we are using the test PyPI first, so we can check how everything works. And once you're sure it's working there, you can then upload to PyPI.
So if we are all uploading all packages there, all names are used sometimes.
Oh, on test PyPI, they will show up, but test PyPI, I think they have a policy they clean up from time to time. Like, it's just a test server, so it's not official or anything.
But I could post to the reader part, right?
Yeah.
Use up all names, and so
We would figure it out and stop you at some point, right? But I think by default, it's just that you don't want to casually, for a tutorial, reserve real names. So that's why we're.
Okay, so let's keep, where are we? Okay, so now we have the PyPI IRC. I'll go back to my place here. And the old way of registering a package on PyPI and uploading was using the setup.py register and upload commands. We are avoiding this because some older versions of distutils, which is the library that runs setup.py, they would use HTTP and not HTTPS by default. So there is another package that does the secure communication between servers, and it's called Twine. So we need to install it, pip install Twine. And well, before we do that, if you have the setup.py and everything here, we are going to do Python setup.py sdist, which stands for source distribution. And this will create a file that we can copy to other places to install our package. And it's also the format that PyPI makes available on the website. And there is a parsing error. Cool. Why? PyPI. Of course, I didn't put, I said that you should do this and I didn't do it. So, okay. Now I've fixed this. And okay, so this should be the output that you see. Did anyone have any troubles running this command? The Python setup.py sdist. So what's doing here is that if I list the files I have now, I have a new directory called dist. And it created a .tar.gz file, which has all the content of our repository or code. So Python setup.py sdist stands for source distribution. And that's the way we will upload the package to PyPI. So if we look at the content of this file, TF, I think. Yeah, we can see that has the configuration and all the files we have in our directory now, but in the package format that Python requires.
The .pypi file goes into my home? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
The PyPI ERC file goes in your home directory.
Where did the version number come from? The 1.0 version?
It comes from the setup.py file, so we set the version here to be 1.0. So over time, you need to update this number. And okay, so now we, like I was saying before, we use a module called Twine to upload our package and register our package on PyPI, so we need to do pip install Twine. And now that we have our source package available on this, and we have Twine installed, we can say we want to register a new package on PyPI, and we'll use -r here stands for the name of the repository we are using. By default, it will try to install to PyPI. So we are going to say here PyPI test, which is the one I have configured on my PyPI RC file. And what happened if... of course. And then I need to say which package I want to upload. And we'll give the name of the package, the package file that we just created on the dist directory, and execute. Yeah, this is the command that will, when you register at the first time, it will create the package entry on PyPI, on test PyPI in this case. And then it will try to upload the first time. And then later, you don't need to register. You just say Twine upload and newer versions of your package. Okay, so apparently I should have verified my email, and I should have said that to you also. Yeah, of course. When I created the username, it said here that they sent a confirmation email. You need to go to your email and confirm that the email exists. So that's why I got the error when I tried to do the Twine register here. So where is my email? So if you go to your email, you should have received an email saying, complete your PyPI registration. And if you open the email and click on the link there, you'll get a page like this one to confirm the registration. And then it has some rules about, and this is probably the email you get when you register on the correct PyPI. So Twine is better than the default setup.py because if you do setup.py register, it will work too. But the issue is that by default, it doesn't use HTTPS. So like if you're uploading something and someone is sniffing your network, they can get your PyPI password and username and so on. So Twine is more secure. Yes?
So just make sure the package name and what you import can be very different things.
Yes. Yes.
So if you have the package installed, you will be able to import word count lib because that's the module that's in the package that you installed. Does that make? So you can name the package, PyCon 2. And then when you install it, what the package PyCon 2 installs, one of the things it installs is wordcount_lib.py. So packages can install multiple libraries.
Yes. So what's the confusion that's happening here is that the package name will be this one, but when you import, you need to import from or import word count _lib. And usually you want the name of your package to be the same name that you import. For the tutorial today, it would be hard because everyone would try to upload the word count package to test PyPI, and everyone will have an error because like someone did this first, and now the others will try to get the same name on test PyPI. So that's why we have the different name here and the name of the module that you would import. Okay, so I'm gonna confirm this. And okay, now I'm registered. So now if I do the Twine register, It shouldn't complain. OK, cool. So now the package is registered on PyPI. And the way to check this is if we go here, and what was the name I gave? And search from PyCon tutorial. Whoa, no, it's not that. PyCon tutorial, Luiz. Okay, why? Oh, nice. Okay, so went to another place. Yeah, okay, so I'll take a shortcut here because it's showing like the last package that were uploaded, and then it's here. So this is the package I just registered. And you can see that there's no installable version here yet. There's not listing any file nor version or anything because we just registered the project. We didn't upload any version yet. So this is the second step. So we will run the same command, but instead of register here, we're gonna say upload, and then it will upload this distribution to PyPI. And now if I reload the page, now we have an installable version here. And let's go back to the package index. And I see that no one succeeded in registering the package yet because it's not showing here. So if people are having trouble, please. Oh, okay, so you're faster than me. Yeah, this is all the same one. So cool. So now if I want to install this package, for example, from test PyPI, I can do pip install -i this time. And it's a bit annoying because you need to give all the path. It's PyPI tester. No, it's test PyPI. Test pypi.python.org. And what was the name of the package? Did I get this right? What is it? Shy. Ah, okay. There's a simple missing in the end of this. Okay, so by default, when you do pip install name of a package, it will check on PyPI. What I did here is that if you use the -i flag, you can pass the URL for test PyPI instead. And at first, it didn't work because I put the URL, but I forgot this /simple here, which is the way that PyPI lists all the packages available. And you can see that I installed this package that one of you created. Who was the person that? OK, so I installed his package. And since this is installed now, I can open a Python terminal and say import word count lib. And this is the confusion that was happening before, because the name of the package is different than the name of the module we are installing. Usually we want to avoid this. And then I can call, I don't remember what, it's consume, right? Yes, well, we can also call dangerous. So word count, for ace. And there we are. We have our division by 0 error. And now the only difference, if you test here and you see that your package is working, everything, you can change and upload this to PyPI. And what you do is twine, register, and this name of the package. I'm not going to do this because I don't want this package on my PyPI. But the only difference is that you don't need to give the -r flag for sending to PyPI, but to test PyPI. By default, it will send to PyPI. Yep. Yeah, that's it. So we are already over time, but just a quick, some quick extra links that you can follow. If you go to the issues, there are 3 links here, and Titus talked briefly in the beginning. There is a group of people, the Python Package Authority, that they maintain PyPI and pip and all the libraries for packaging. So they have a lot of good documentation that you could go and check out anytime you need a reference on packaging. There is these other 2 links. They are, the first one is an example, a template you can use for your packages called Shablona. It's more oriented toward scientific projects, but it's very nice because they already have a directory structure that they recommend, and you can see it's similar to what we had. You have the doc directory where you put your documentation, setup.py, license, and how to organize your code. And they have descriptions here on what everything is doing or why you should do like this and how to write tests and so on. They are still recommending those, but okay, you should use PyTest. And this other one, Cookie Cutter, it's curious because it's since we were before on the document compiler theme, this is a template for compiling projects or for building the initial project. And there's a lot of different projects that they support, like here a small list. So for example, if you want to use Flask to make a web page, you can start from this cookie cutter package that already has a lot of things configured for you, or for OpenStack, or for Ansible, or a lot of different things. And it's nice because they already have some practice, like for example, they probably already have the documentation, the instructions for you to set up the CI server or to run the documentation, so you don't need to go to run Sphinx by yourself. They already have everything prepackaged for you, and you can start from something that's already working. Yes? Yeah. The Django community, there is a very nice template for Django websites that's set up like even stuff for building packages for Windows machines, which is not trivial. And they already have a CI service called AppVeyor that can build a package for you and even upload through PyPI once it's built. So they have way more configuration already ready for you to run. Yes?
If you made a change to your project after you registered it the first time, you just made it just client upload and then that same path, or do you?
Sorry, if you
Updated your project and then you want to send the new version
mm-hmm.
to PyPI, is it the command just client upload? Or
Yes, you need to do the sdist to create the new source package, and then you upload. But one detail is that you can upload the same version again. So PyPI will say, okay, this version is already here, you can do the same. So you need to update the version number and improve. Cool. Okay, so we are already over time. So thank you very much for sticking around. Hope that this was useful for everyone. And the documentation and everything is available on Etherpad and on the GitHub issues. Maybe we'll put back into the documentation instead of leaving the GitHub issues because it's easier to access later. But thank you very much for sticking around.